So tonight I am going to read some Krishnamurti, and then I'm going to point to something that Ramana Maharshi has said. But we'll start with Krishnamurti. Now, with Krishnamurti, it's really important to listen what he says, and almost to let his words be a mirror in which you can see yourself. Now, he's very strong in his message, so if you can, it's important to, you don't have to agree with anything he says, obviously, but also you don't have to disagree. You just need a truly open mind and really listen and see where, if any place, it takes you. He's talking about meditation. And he says, in meditation, there is a major issue, and that is the question of how to bring about order, to live a life of righteousness, which is highly intelligent and sensitive, not intellectual or verbal, but a life in which there is no conflict. For a mind that is in conflict is not a free mind and is incapable of looking at itself, incapable of seeing what is. So our next point is, can the mind bring about order within itself? Because without laying the right foundation, one cannot build anything. And if one is to meditate, it is part of that meditation to lay the foundation. This foundation is freedom from opinion. Most of us, as you know, have 1,000 opinions about everything. Can the mind be free altogether from opinions, remaining only with what is and nothing else? If the mind can remain with what is, it is free of this process of duality. Where there is duality, there is contradiction, and therefore conflict. Right? So, this is a wonderful pointer, because to stay with the what is probably one of the most difficult things we have to do. And we're not conditioned to do that. We don't know how to do that. We don't know how to stay with the actual what is in that moment, in this moment, without bringing in the past, which is opinions, or likes or dislikes, which is part of our conditioning. So to look at the what is and to see the what is so clearly, that the mind is really still and is just absorbed in the what is. Okay. Please, he says, we are observing ourselves. You are not merely listening to the speaker. In the very act of listening, in seeing the truth, all the falseness of what is being said, you are using the speaker, as it were, as a mirror in which you are looking at yourselves. Therefore, you are discovering that there can be no perception without distortion as long as there is conflict of any kind in relationship. I'll repeat that.
Yeah, read that.
That's right. You are using the speaker as a mirror. Therefore, you are discovering that there can be no perception without distortion as long as there is conflict of any kind in relationship. That means in relationship to another person, in relationship to nature, in relationship to your work. We are constantly in relationship. So he's saying, as long as that the mind is in conflict, there cannot be clear perception. Now he goes on. It is only in relationship with others that one can begin to discover oneself and see what one actually is. And the understanding of it is the ending of all conflict. A mind that is in conflict is obviously a distorted mind. And however much it may practice meditation, such a mind will only see its own distortion and not something totally new. So he's saying, yes, by all means meditate, but meditate with an open, free mind that doesn't have a lot of these collections of flatteries, of hurts, of anxieties, of insults. Then he goes on. There is the question of how to observe, how to look, not only outwardly, but inwardly. The outer and the inner are one process. It is not a dual process. One can only observe when there is no image through which one is looking. Now, we've said that many times. If I have an image about you, I'm not looking at you. I am looking through the image, or the image is looking at you. That's fairly simple, isn't it? To observe means to have freedom from prejudice, from belief, freedom from any form of distortion. And there is distortion when the mind is tethered to a belief, when the mind is frightened, ambitious, striving to achieve a position of power, and so on. How can it possibly then be free to look? So it is very important, it seems to me, to find out what it means to observe, to see. That is, what it means to be aware, to be attentive. All right, I'm going to just stop here because he goes on. So this is important. What does it mean to observe, to see, but to actually see? Not through a distortion, which will always be if you have an image, but to actually see. What does that mean, he says? We don't ask ourselves that question. We go on automatic. It's quicker that way. I don't have to really give attention to you when I meet you. I can just quickly look at you through the image I have of you, and off we go. And you're looking at me through the image you have of me. And then we attempt to have a relationship, by the way. So, what it means to be aware, to be attentive. Attention is not concentration. Concentration implies the effort to exclude all thoughts outside one particular issue. We think it is part of meditation to learn to concentrate either on an image or on an idea, or to practice certain systems which involve concentration. But where there is concentration, there is exclusion and resistance. And where there is resistance, there is conflict and the way of duality. So is this true? Is this true? On the other hand, attention is not exclusion. Just to be aware. This awareness is distorted when observation is colored by prejudice from which springs a conclusion. When you are conditioned as a believer in some particular form of religious dogma or tradition, such as the Christian, the Hindu, or the Buddhist tradition, a conditioned mind is incapable of observation, for it will act, think, and experience according to its conditioning. Just as a devout Catholic practicing his belief day after day will experience the figure of Christ in his vision or dreams, that only strengthens his conditioning. Therefore, such a person is not free to observe. He remains caught in his own particular belief, his own particular dogma, inviting the world to enter his cage. So, an essential part of meditation is this understanding of the difference between concentration and attention. Concentration demands effort. Awareness or attention does not. So, this is interesting because even when you meditate, he's suggesting no system, but a full and total awareness of the movements in the mind as they move. But just to see them. Not to do anything, just to observe, just to see. And remember, in the seeing is the doing. Releases. If the seeing becomes a judgment, right, then we hold on and we dwell on what was seen. And then comes all the admonitions. I shouldn't, I mustn't. What a horrible person I am to even have had that thought or that feeling. As opposed to just seeing and letting go.
Well, it's like an impartial seeing, right? An impartial observation of each thought as it arises. In another place, he describes it as being choicelessly aware.
Yes.
Aware without any choosing.
Well, that's awareness without a me.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
Right? Awareness without the me. I mean, bottom line, that's what he's talking. Awareness without the me.
So is he a proponent of meditation? I haven't read this book that you're...
Yes,
So
but what kind of meditation?
Right, so he's a proponent of meditation.
Absolutely.
To what end?
To an absolute stilling of the mind.
Uh-huh.
Because you see, with Krishnamurti, he didn't talk much about the absolute. He did mention he would refer to that which is sacred, but he didn't want to give you an image of what it was. He wanted you to find it for yourself. But the only way it's going to come to you, says he, is with an open and quiet mind. Then there's a possibility, only a possibility, for that which is sacred to come to you. Because he really didn't want you to form any image at all.
Can you define sacred?
Holy.
I don't relate to those
Oh,
words.
okay, you don't relate to those words.
No.
That which is absolute, one without a second. Truth, reality.
Truth and
Truth and reality.
So, it's interesting. So what he's suggesting is, so, you go and sit on your front porch and you want to just sit there peaceably. And so he's suggesting, I think, so that as each thought comes up, you would witness it and it would pass. The next thought would come up and it would pass away. And so that's the opposite of what one typically does. One goes and sits quietly, and then a thought comes up, and then that thought leads to another thought, and then the next thought, and we're in a web of thinking, right? As opposed to, as a thought comes up, letting it pass by, and having a space, and then the other thought, it's like, canceling out each thought. I was thinking it's like, when you're at the computer and you have a text in front of you, and when you hit delete, the line disappears, leaving empty space. And then the next one, right? And then the next one, and then the next one. And you're left with a blank page. So you could do that sitting on your porch or wherever you're sitting with the writing paper in your mind on the screen of your consciousness. Then you'd have some empty bandwidth, and you'd be lighter.
You know how I do that? I drum for an hour before I go to sleep, and it's like deleting.
Drumming.
It doesn't
that's
seem peaceful, but it's just totally disconnects.
When the mind is completely attentive, you give your whole body, mind, and heart, everything you have, to observe and to listen. And this requires energy. I don't know if you have noticed that when you listen to somebody very carefully, without prejudice, without the interference of your likes and dislikes, then you are attentive. When you are really listening to somebody, there is no me or you. There is only the act of listening. To listen so completely. To be so in the present, fully present in the present moment. And then there's no more observer and observed. There's only that what is.
Then that becomes the reflection. There's a reflection of the awareness.
That is awareness.
Yeah.
That is awareness.
But I'm going back to the line I didn't understand. There's something about the reflection. The you and the me become
It's one.
one.
It's no, that's
So that-
non-duality.
Right. So then that's the ultimate reflection. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, you could say that. You could say that. It's pure awareness.
Yeah.
Chip, you wanted to say?
No, so I was just gonna sort of reiterate, I guess, what Paul's saying. So what you're saying is practices then is you pay attention to each thought as it comes in. You watch it, you let it go. You pay attention to the next thought arises, watch it, let it go. So that's his meditation practice.
Yes, fully
That's-
awareness of the movement, of the content of your consciousness.
Right, gotcha.
The meditation is the emptying of the content of your consciousness, moment by moment. You'll see, he's going to tell you more about it.
Gotcha.
However, another form of meditation is when you're in a relationship and you're listening.
Mhm.
How attentive are you really? Where are you?
Right.
Are you in your head? Are you in your reactions? Or are you totally one with the act of listening and the other person?
But it's essentially the same thing, right? You focus on each thought as it comes, whether it's through the medium of another person,
Yes.
or whether it's through the what your mind presents.
Well, what's interesting is that when you're really listening, no thought moves in your mind because you're so fully present with this other person.
Mhm.
So all you're hearing is what's coming. It's coming into you. You're it. It's you. There's one.
Mhm.
See, there's not a duality.
Mhm.
So you fully become the listening
Mhm.
and the other person
Mhm.
in that moment.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a beautiful dance.
Mhm.
And then when that happens, you understand. Then you understand the other. You understand yourself better. You really, what can I say? That there's just a beautiful freedom that comes with that, and an openness. Just this openness, because now you're not debating anything. You're not trying to convince anything. You've really heard. And then the other person also feels understood, and then there's a connection. Right? When you're with someone and you feel that other person has really understood you without any judgment of you, what's more beautiful than that? Right?
You cannot have two thoughts in your mind at the same time. So, if I catch myself with a thought and I replace it with no thought, then it's empty. But I have to catch myself that I'm thinking to choose not to think.
Yes.
To go in the gap.
Yes. So when I'm listening to someone and now a thought passes, there's an awareness of the passing of thought, and I've got to let it go because now it's become the observer and the observed rather than the non-dual listening. Right? Okay. Now he says, but this requires energy. And if you are listening very attentively to what is being said, you're learning. You're not concentrating. You are completely attentive. Therefore, there is no division between the speaker and the one who listens. And in this, there is involved a great deal more. Speaking psychologically, is the observer at all different from the thing he observes? When I look at myself, is the observer, psychologically speaking, is the observer different from the thing he looks at? If he's different, then there's a division between the thing observed and between that which is experienced and the experience of the observer. It is this difference that brings about conflict and therefore distortion. So one must be very clear and find out directly for oneself whether the observer is the observed. This again is part of what we call meditation. When you go into it very deeply, you'll see that the observer is the observed. Now you're looking inside yourself, psychologically. So, when you're jealous, the jealousy is not different from the entity that observes or is aware of the jealousy. He is jealousy. He is the reaction which is called jealousy. That's the me. He is the me. So the me has an awareness that it's jealous, but it doesn't have an awareness that it's the me that's looking at the jealousy. So when there is no resistance to that thing which he called jealousy, but mere observation of the fact, I shouldn't be jealous, I mustn't be jealous, it's bad to be jealous, but just an observation that there was an arising of jealousy, then you will see the word is not the thing, and jealousy is awakened through the word, through memory, and thereby brings about the observer as being different from the observed. All right. A feeling of jealousy arises. We'll use what he said. Now there is an awareness. The me, there was jealousy. The me is the one that sees this jealousy and thinks it's different from the jealousy. But that jealousy in the me is not the me is jealousy. However, awareness observed it as a fact. There was no opinion about it. Awareness observes. In that awareness, he said, you begin to see what is jealousy. There's no resistance now. I don't have to do anything about being jealous. I don't have to even fix it. I now see it, there's an awareness of it, and I let it go. I don't resist it. The minute I resist it, the me gains strength, and now I'm stuck in this. As opposed to freedom. The idea is to free the mind.
Well, so most of the time though, if I'm sitting with someone and they're telling a story, and as I listen to the story, I feel jealousy, right?
Yes.
I'm probably going to push the jealousy away. I'm not going to want to stay with owning the fact that I'm jealous, because one isn't supposed to have jealous feelings. So probably if I'm sitting listening to the story and jealousy comes up, I'll probably I'll banish it to the outskirts of my awareness, and it might even just go underground. It'll shape how I hear the story. It'll shape the quality of my listening to this person. And then it might go on to leave me feeling less than about myself. Or I might get wrapped up in feeling antagonistic thoughts about the person, finding a way to diminish them, to alleviate my jealousy. I think those are the common ways we experience jealousy. Am I
Yes,
right?
but see.
Now, in all those ways, the jealousy is something separate from me.
Right.
It's a reaction I have.
Right.
But it's still separate from me in that sense.
Right.
It's not me totally. It's still seeing the jealousy with a gap between me and it. He's suggesting that when you experience jealousy in that moment, there's no gap.
That's right. There is no gap. And when you create a gap, now look at, you got on a train.
Yes.
And look where you went. I'm jealous, I shouldn't be, and all the things that you did to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to awareness of it and doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
There's no resistance to it.
Yes.
Doing nothing.
Mhm.
Letting it go and continue listening.
So when it comes up and it's kind of like just bathed in the light of pure awareness, it dissolves.
There's no conflict.
There's no conflict,
Right.
exactly.
But there is naming it. I think you do have to have the awareness of it to say, oh, jealousy is present. You know, it's like going past.
You might.
Don't you?
You could really even be really good at just seeing the feeling and even not naming it. But you know, it's like a splinter. You know, you feel the pinch. You can feel the pinch without naming it. And then that's probably even easier than not to resist it and not to do anything about it and to go back to the listening.
Paul, in your description, you're saying there's a gap between what you're feeling and the experience of jealousy. I thought most people experience jealousy as there isn't a gap. It's kind of like, I'm jealous. You know, it's kind of, sort of, I think for the egoic self, it's like, this is me, this is who I am. And then I think that self-condemnation sort of comes out of that
Yes.
Yeah.
process.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I didn't I kind of missed what you said about the gap.
There's a gap when you juxtapose it against what he's suggesting, where you just see it, let it
Gotcha.
dissolve in the awareness.
Gotcha.
Then there's no gap of rationalizing it, moralizing it,
Exactly.
defending it,
That's
subverting it,
exactly
amplifying it.
right. That's it. And see, he's saying that's true meditation. So listen to what he says. And this is interesting. He says, all this is part of meditation, and I hope you're doing it as we're talking. Because if you don't do it now, you'll never do it. It isn't a thing you do when you go home to think about. It is the beauty of meditation that one does it all the time as one is living. Every moment of the day, as one walks, as one talks, so that the mind becomes acutely aware of itself and therefore highly sensitive, intelligent, and deeply honest. Then there is no distortion, no illusion. See? This is really quite beautiful, and
That's really the kind of meditation that
see
he
now
had.
he's
That's his
unfolding his
Yeah.
meditation. It is also a part of meditation to find out for oneself freely what the nature of thinking is, where the beginning of thought lies, and whether the mind can be completely still to find out when the action of thought is necessary and when it's not. Thought being the reaction of knowledge, of memory and experience, which is the past. We are the past. Though thought may project the future, or assert that only the present matters, it is still thought in operation, and thought is the past. For most of us, thought is enormously important because we are living in the past, because we are the past, and because all our activities stem from the past. It is part of that meditation to find out where the act of thinking is absolutely necessary, logical, healthy, and clear, without the interference of any personal like or dislike. And also when thought must be absolutely quiet. So here he's saying, yeah, thought is important. It has to be logical and sane and right on. Of course, How are we going to communicate? But that thought is fully present, and it's really a pointer to your, it's a pointer from and to your true nature. But the thought that's wrapped up in our conditioning, in beliefs, in images, in opinions, that thought is the past. That thought is the me, and the me is the past. That's why the me distorts the present, because it's looking at the present from the eyes of the past. So to be able to differentiate when thought is important and when he says it's not important, and when it's coming from the me, it's not important.
You could also say when it's creating the me,
Or it's creating.
because the me is created by thinking.
If you have not done all this, he goes on to say, meditation has very little meaning. One can meditate in the bus, washing dishes, wiping the floor, or talking to another. But perhaps it may help sometime to sit quietly by yourself, or when you walk by yourself in the woods or in the street, to observe yourself by your reactions, or to be completely quiet. The whole idea of sitting in a certain posture, as they advocated in the East, is very simple. It is to sit straight so that the blood flows to the head properly, whereas if one sits doubled over, the free passage of blood is restricted. But if the brain is rather petty, narrow, and limited, no amount of blood will prevent it. No amount of blood will prevent it from remaining petty, narrow, and stupid. If one is really serious about meditation, one should not only observe what has been said this morning, but also see if the body can remain completely quiet. It is part of meditation to learn all this in oneself. To communicate, one must use words. But there's also a communication which is nonverbal. The nonverbal state of understanding between you and the speaker requires that you also have been through all this. Otherwise, we can't possibly communicate. It's like leading someone to the door. The rest of the process you'll have to do yourself. The whole promise of meditation is that you will eventually have a still mind, a mind that is highly awake and able to go into itself to depths impossible for a mind that's full of effort. That is what is generally promised in all the systems. But when one has discarded all the systems, one can see the importance of having a quiet mind. Not a dull or mechanical mind, but one that is very quiet, very still, observing. Silence also is necessary to observe and to listen. If I'm continually talking to myself, offering opinions, making judgments and evaluations, have aggressive attitudes because I have certain beliefs, then I am not listening. I can only listen to you when the mind is completely quiet, not resisting, neither agreeing nor disagreeing, but actually listening with my whole being. For that there must be silence. If you would see the beauty of a cloud or a tree, you must look at it with complete quiet. But if in that quietness there is the observer who is different from the thing observed, then there is no quiet. So meditation is the beginning of understanding oneself directly, and not through the medium of some drug or drink or excitement. It is there to be understood directly and simply, to understand oneself, to know oneself. The ending of sorrow is the beginning of self-knowing. Most of us are burdened with a great many sorrows. And in the ending of that sorrow lies the understanding of oneself. To understand oneself, one must observe without any distortion, without any like or dislike, without saying this is good, I'll keep it, or this is bad and I'll put it away. Observe, so the mind becomes completely alert, both at the conscious level and in the deeper and hidden parts of the mind.
You know, I really think it's just so important to see the primary emphasis he puts on the role of thought in connection with peace, silence, and suffering. So it would be like if we were all robots, and there was a dial that controlled our thought frequency. And when the dial gets loose, it has too much play in it. And so you see the robot start acting funny. That he starts having trouble with the other robots, he starts feeling nervous and anxious, or he starts feeling depressed, his functionality diminishes. And so, you know, he comes to the attention of the healthy robot practitioners. And they say, oh, bring him over here, let's see. And they look, sure enough, his robot lock nut is loose. And that means that the thoughts are starting to wobble all over the place. They're going from the impersonal, just thoughts when you need them,
Good.
right? Getting to California, balancing my checkbook, whatever. They're starting to drift into the wobble zone where it's about personal stuff and hurts, and so then they just bring the dial back, set the key and lock it in again, and sure enough, he starts moving straight through the environment, the world. His relationships back improve, he starts being more functional, because thought is in its right place.
Thought in its right place. So now this is the last paragraph in this. So, he says, when one has gone through all this and understood it, there comes a quietness, a silence that is beyond all verbalization, and which is necessary for the mind if it would understand something beyond itself, beyond the projection of thought and time and bondage. Something which man has everlastingly sought, the immortal and the timeless. It is only then, perhaps, that a quiet mind can come upon it. But like when you know, the first time you saw a magnificent mountain or a sunset, or a beautiful person, or a thing of beauty, or when you hear beautiful music, right? There's no you. There's only what is at that moment. But then the tendency is immediately, oh, I want to see that again, I want to hear that again, or I have to own it, or I have to have it, or, right? Even in that, we're not able to just just observe something beautiful without having to have it. See, he says that's meditation to him. That's meditation moment by moment.
The me is always living in that world of, you know, comparison of, you know, I'm this and they're that, and, you know, and good and bad and struggle. So the me will never be free of that. So the only reason, or the only way I think we ever free ourselves from jealousy is to recognize that we're not the me.
Yes, of course, because it's the me that's the jealousy.
Right.
That's
right.
right.
It's the me that experiences the jealousy.
It is the jealousy. There is no jealousy without a me.
Right.
So the me is the jealousy.
Okay.
So that in that moment, when there is the spotlight of awareness of the jealousy, that's putting the spotlight on the me.
Right.
And when we don't expand on it and just release it, if we can, we're releasing the me.
Right. So I think if in that meditative process, what we're experiencing is a recognition that I'm not the me, then what I see that process engendering is the liberation from
Yes,
that me.
of course.
And that's what I want to have. Is, you know, that's the purpose of my spiritual life, is to engender that freedom from the me.
Well, that which observes the me without thought is the light.
Right.
Awareness
Is the self.
is the self.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
And that's why he's saying, in that moment, he said, when there is that observation, when there's no resistance to what has come up, because it's the me that produced it, and it's the me that's resisting it.
Right.
So when there's no resistance to what, and just an observing of a fact of jealousy, you know, that's a fact. Jealousy, sorrow, whatever the fact. Observing the fact, that's the self that shines the light on that.
It's like the Buddha under the tree. I mean, and all the Maras are coming at him. I mean,
That's right.
jealousy is just one more. He
Oh,
just
of
sat
course.
very still.
That's
and
right.
observed.
That's right. That's the
That's what he
meditation.
did. Yeah.
That's right. And it's the letting go. But you couldn't observe it without the light of the self.
Right.
It's the light of the self that observes it. It's the me that's observing it when it has a story attached to it.
Right.
Or analyzes it. And that's what he's pointing to. And so, if one is constantly shining that light on the content of one's consciousness, then you begin to empty the content of your consciousness. And now the mind is open. And the only thought that's coming through is a thought that's necessary. Functional, practical necessity.
I'm kind of
Which
with
is
you.
from the self as well.
Well, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. I'm rudely interrupted again. But I agree with you about that the goal is to take it where Buddha left off, which was the Buddha tree. He was looking to end suffering, to take it from that point on and become infinitely happy forever. Can we do that? And you're talking about that, and I says, it can be done, it's doable, but the thing is, are we ready for it?
I am.
Good for you. Read that comment.
That's why we're here.
Listen, the point is, you are already happy. You are happiness. You are bliss. That's our true nature. But the me, the thoughts, the past, the conditioning, that's the veil. And he's talking about lifting this veil.
Yeah, somehow we always get off on this. Somehow this thing with thoughts, I think somehow there's some other word that we need for that, because Because thoughts can also be, you know, like, a beautiful symphony or a beautiful sunset.
Yes.
Those are thoughts.
Yes.
You know, so thoughts in and of themselves aren't necessarily from the me. I don't think that's...
But that's what he differentiated. He said to be able to differentiate the thoughts that are absolutely necessary, and those are the thoughts that are pointers from the absolute, or those are the thoughts that just have you functioning, as opposed to the thoughts that are coming from the me.
Right, so you're talking the thoughts that are absolutely necessary and thoughts that, you know, that support, that are absolutely necessary and support functioning. But I think also thoughts that support, you know, bliss and creativity and spontaneity.
Of course.
You know,
Those are pointers.
Yes, those are pointers. Those thoughts are coming from and pointers to the absolute.
And I think they're expressions of the absolute.
It's the whole bag and baggage.
Right.
Yes.
So it's not. So in other words, we don't just need thoughts to balance our checkbook, and you know, we need thoughts to make the Taj Mahal or you know, the Milky Way galaxy,
yes,
or you know, these are,
of course. But he's differentiating between those thoughts,
right,
and the thoughts that are coming from the self-centered
right,
me with its fears and worries.
right.
And,
Yeah, so it's kind of like I'm sorry.
yeah.
No, it's kind of like a tainted. It's kind of like a tainted thought, tainted by the me, or the pure thought from the
Right.
self. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's what thought originally was a pointer to the absolute and from the absolute.
Right.
You're just staying with the what is.
The what is very clear.
That's right. And you're staying with it right now. But the meditation also is watching your reactions as they arise. And staying with that open mind, so that what is yet to happen has a chance to then happen.
Going with the flow is kind of hard, but it beats the alternatives.
So now I just wanted, this is just a short paragraph. The question is as to him. I would like to know how you organize this conference without thinking about the future.
That's a great question.
And he says, we said thought is necessary. We have to think about the future, about what we're going to do, how to organize the meetings in the tent and so on. Unless you thought about the future when you have to go home, you would be in a state of amnesia and you couldn't possibly live that way. We have to think sanely and organize wisely for the future. But we are saying, when action is wholly conditioned by the past or by the future, then conflict comes out of that action. In organizing these meetings and planning for the school, you know, they have a school, we must use our thoughts very carefully and wisely, not bringing in our personal idiosyncrasies and characteristics, but by observing, help to bring that about. If I stick to my opinion that it should be this way or that way, then there's no cooperation. Cooperation is only possible when there is no personal evaluation or personal idiosyncrasy interfering with the act. Will you be any wiser when you leave here? Any different? So that your whole mind and body is entirely awake and alert? Are we learning to look at the beauty of a tree, the flight of a bird, to watch a young child playing? Or are we going to step back into our shoddy lives with our particular characteristics, opinions, hopes, and fears? Wow. So he's saying, are we really going to be able to look non-personally, without the me, at our situation, or at a tree, or whatever, or at flowers? Are we going to really look? Or are we going to go back and live, he calls it shoddy lives, of our opinions, our fears, our anxieties, all our projections of things, rather than to be fully present with the what is now and get the personal me out of it and thereby look. And, interestingly enough, any situation that you're ambivalent about, if you really can look without the me, the facts of the situation will tell you. If you looked carefully at the facts, but you can't look with the me, so that means looking at the facts, there can't be fear. There can't be wishing it were different. There can't be a fantasy. Just as seeing the what is and the facts of what is. But to really look and to really listen without this me. And then, I'm ending here, guys, then I'm going to end with a question from Ramana Maharshi. What is the light by which my mind has the capacity to perceive objects? The mind is a flow of thoughts, and thoughts themselves are inert. Then what makes the mind appear sentient? Thoughts are dead things. They have no consciousness. What is that light that gives it life, that gives it consciousness? What is that light that has us observe without the me? So we see things as they are, not as we wish them to be. We see the what is of every situation and the what is about ourselves. With no fears, no judgments, no beating ourselves up.
So are the thoughts pointers too?
Thoughts are pointers.
As long as you're not
As
judging them.
A thought of judgment is not a pointer. A thought of judgment is the me, is a pointer to the me.
How do feelings, attachments, feelings, love,
Yeah, well, most
work
of
into that?
aren't feelings part of thought?
Not always.
Find a feeling that doesn't have a thought associated with it.
I can find a thought that doesn't have a feeling. Be very intellectualized.
Right, but you can't do the other one.
Can't do the other one.
No.
Right.
No.
So I said that the situations, the what is, the reality.
Yes.
Okay.
The what is the reality of whatever is.
And
In that moment.
In that moment.
Right. Could change. Right, obviously. It could change. It always changes. But the thing is, what you want to be left with now is that light
Read the
of
question again.
awareness. What is the light by which my mind has the capacity to perceive objects? The mind is a flow of thoughts, and thoughts themselves are inert. Then what is it that makes the mind appear sentient, alive? What is that? That light.
Awareness.
Awareness, which is your true nature. Which is your true
And
nature.
how do you separate awareness from deep feeling a feeling that is very powerful?
Awareness, there's awareness of that feeling is in awareness.
Awareness illuminates the feeling. Without
Oh.
awareness,
Yeah, you leave that
Yeah,
out.
you,
right.
there can't be anything without awareness.
Okay.
Where's your anesthesia comes in.
And he's asking what's the source of
the answer.
awareness.
What's the source of that light?
Right.
What is that? What is that light?
Which
that
is a
you-
$64 question in science right now. That's what they're trying to understand.
And what Krishnamurti was saying was the way you come about this answer to this question is by awareness of that me that's taking you away from the light and into this other world, the false self. Taking
That's
you
what I
from-
meant by thoughts being pointers, right? Is
Yes.
that okay?
Yes, thoughts up.
Even if they're negative, at least not that you're judging, but that you're just seeing, you know,
Yes.
and seeing that would take you away from
Yes.
awareness. It'd be a pointer that it's taking you the wrong way.
Yes, the awareness, that's the light that shows you that. That's what he was saying here, that's the meditation. When the thought is of fear, when the thought is of even the thoughts of, I'm gonna be great, or any of those thoughts that have to do with a personal me. What is that awareness that shines a light? What is the light that shines on that? That's awareness. That's you. Your true nature. And it's just observing it as a fact. Because it has no opinion. Awareness doesn't have an opinion. And awareness is not personal. Your awareness and my awareness, this is one awareness, one reality.
Feels pretty personal.
Yes, to the me it does.
No, I mean to the self it does.
To the self it does.
Sure.
The self doesn't know from personal.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's the one person.
Okay.
You know, it's interesting. It's
The
interesting.
one.
You know, it's interesting.
One without a second.
Right.
There is no second.
Well, it's just interesting, just to end on this. So much of this spiritual approach, as I said before, puts a light on thought,
Yes.
right? And today, in the therapy business, if somebody comes in, you know, and says, "Do something, I've got this terribly toxic me, it's killing me," right? Well, the preeminent method right now is cognitive therapy, which directs your
Cognitive
thoughts.
Correct.
So it's like, you know, if you went, if you went into the state-of-the-art neurosurgeon's laboratory right now, and again, you know, you said, I have a terribly toxic me, I can't stand it, I can't wait for therapy, I can't wait to practice enlightenment, do something, you know, intervene. Well, they're not going to cut off your hand, right? They're probably going to go into your brain. And they'd probably say, well, look, we don't know where, but let's take a shot. Let's cut off a piece over on this end and see what happens, right? And if it's not that part, maybe we'll do that part. And sooner or later, we'll disconnect the thought channel that is driving this me. Because we have to be clear, it's not that there's a me who thinks. Thought produces the me.
Right.
The me is a product of thought and memory. So if that's why, if you watched your thoughts, if you really had that capacity to interrupt every thought, to let go of every thought that was about a me, you'd be ego-free quickly.
Yeah, I was thinking that like strong feelings like jealousy is the one tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like it's a good thing in a way because it needs a stronger light, and it's painful, so it's harder to ignore. Like a lot of the everyday me thoughts are so normal, and it's like blah blah blah.
Yeah, they're so subtle. This is more
it's
dramatic, so it's a
that
bigger
it
portal.
doesn't cause that much pain. It kind of causes low level pain and
Right,
anxiety,
right.
but nothing. It's easy to just kind of live with it.
But if we think about how many little supposedly
There's a lot.
benign
Yeah,
stuff that we don't even pay attention to.
Sure.
that's right.
I mean, the power of all those little things together become maybe even more, consuming than one big jealousy. Because the one big jealousy is there, okay,
Gotta do
delete. But the little
Cumulative.
But that's why what she was saying before about beliefs is really interesting.
Yeah.
Like what do we hold? What are our core beliefs in terms of the way we view reality? Because I think you're right on target with that. It's like an avalanche, right? It starts with those little.
Yeah.
So if you look at our beliefs, which are channeling our thoughts, we're having gazillions of thoughts every instant. So there's this huge force that's being channeled. It's like the projector. You project a light and you have the image of the rabbit or the elephant or whatever, right? So it's that belief system is what our thoughts are shooting through and then out into the world. So I think that was really, all the stuff you're saying is really right on target.
Okay.
And the biggest belief is the belief in me. Right? In
Yeah,
me.
which when he says, "Who am I?" with Ramana Maharshi, I think that's, it's so cool, right? It's just pull out the root self.
That's right.
And that's why I think, I know sometimes when I say this can be easy, it seems annoying, but the fact that something is difficult is a belief,
That's right.
So and I think when we're able to start to question our beliefs, we're able to start to question how we are channeling the mind. And so then we're able to start to reform our life just by the fact that we can change that's the shape of how we think into the world.
Yes. And what's very beautiful is moment by moment, if we remember not to forget, we can actually observe the me. And in the observation of it goes. Just observing and it goes.
I have a question that, just because I'm a clinician, how you use this as clinicians. I mean, that's because it's a variation.
Yes.
And there is thought in clinical work.
Yes,
And
yes,
if you really have the belief
yeah.
of less me,
Yeah.
it's difficult.
Yeah. Well, it's always where the person's at. And many people have to build up a me
Yeah.
because you have to have a strong
Yeah,
ego
the ego,
to let
yeah.
go of the ego.
That's interesting.
So first you have to build, and then you have to help.
That's
them,
right.
And then you have to kill it off.
You find yourself and then you have to lose yourself.
That's interesting.
That's right.
And meanwhile, be happy no matter what.
That's it.
In other
No, I'm
words,
just
So when you
sometimes.
say they have no sense of me, you mean like
Well,
low
in-
self-esteem?
Yes.
But
So
sometimes
that's
I
a
would love
fragile-
for you to think about having it, for those that might be interested, clinical, to be interweaving
Oh,
of
yeah.
this
Yeah.
into actual clinical practice.
Well, we did that with couples. In our book, The Marriage
No, I
Spirit,
read that, but
Yeah,
I
Renee.
think it's,
you need more
yeah.
direct how to do it. Okay.
What, just
Now, how you use yourself, really. I'm
how
more
you use
interested in
yourself?
how you
Yeah.
use yourself.
Yeah, because
Coming.
you're the presence. You're the strong
Yes. Well, you have to
presence
just.
that's-
Well, you can't have a me there. It can't be a me there.
I
You
agree.
really have to be an open space.
Yes, yeah.
Yes. You have to be an open space, and then you hear and see where the one is at.
Yeah.
And then you know how to move, how to help.
But we've said it here lots of times, you know, in the evolution of consciousness, like you were saying before, you know, first you have to have a
me
self.
get
That's
the
the
tea.
first step. And then
Right.
if you want to keep growing after that, the next growth is a spiritual endeavor where you lose yourself. But a lot of people who are involved in spiritual endeavors
They never built.
are drastically in need of good psychotherapy.
That's true.
I agree with that.
A lot of people who never, sorry, I missed that last bit.
A lot of people who are engaged in spiritual activities, right, are better served if they would be in good
Yeah.
psychotherapy.
Yeah, because they bypass all
Right,
the
right.
feelings.
You have to have the
Unfortunately.
foundation before you.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Good. That's heavy.
Yes.
I can tell by, it's like a big log.
You're still making cold
Well,
tea?
because I thought it was warmer today.
It was earlier.
Sunny
It was
beautiful
beautiful,
day.
actually.
I'll
nice
drink
one.
that one.
I was gonna tell Bill to turn up the heat.
Half a cup, please, just
Yeah.
about.
Yeah,
Nicole.
sure.
I just want a little bit.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, just a little bit? Okay, here's a schmidgen for you.
Still a lot, thank you.
Still a lot?
Smaller
And a little bit for you.